Knowing you're being filmed. Not knowing. Knowing as you watch the screen, you knew you were being filmed. Knowing that you didn't know. The subtle degrees of self-consciousness. These are thoughts by Fred Frith commenting the film Step Across the Border in the liner notes of the film from 1990. And these thoughts carry a big question in themselves, the question in how far the presence of a camera changes the situation. How does the camera change the live event? Can there be authenticity in the light of mediatized representation? And particularly in improvisation, we have a strong notion of being true to the moment. Fred Frith is talking of the escape from the false authority that the screen imparts, the inevitable partiality of it. It's only a film, it's not you, just a few moments from a few moments. This film, Step Across the Border, has been a very important influence, and it was crucial for me to find out about improvisation in music. So this is really a good example of how essential a film can be to get informed about a certain subject, and even more how it can stimulate and inspire in terms of individual experience of art. So to put it emphatically, maybe without this film my life might had taken a slightly different path. And with this personal story, I would like to say hello and welcome you to Exploratorium Berlin. Welcome to our symposium, Filming Improvisation, Improvising with Film. It's great that you are here, and thank you so much for coming and participating, everyone. Thank you also again to Eunice Martins, Caroline Cecilia Talone, Simon Bertz, and Eric Wong for creating the opening in such a fantastic manner to the symposium yesterday evening. Prior to the symposium, I had already started a new series entitled ImproVisions, in which I wanted to lay ground for the topic of improvisation in film. And it seemed logic to me to start the series with screening Step Across the Border. And I was happy that Fred Frith and Nicolas Humbert, who is one of the two directors, along with Werner Penzel, accepted my invitation to come here and discuss the film publicly. It was interesting to learn that back then, Fred was not at all interested in a documentation. He didn't want a film about him, but he understood that the filmmakers were anyway rather interested in improvising a film by themselves, only following him loosely on his steps. They didn't want to script it, but produce a film in the tradition of direct cinema. They have been pointing out it is the moment that counts, the intuitive sense for what is happening in the space. The film, in my opinion, is really an outstanding piece of art, and one of the reasons for this we may find in Fred Frith's astonishment about the result, which he describes like this. In the end, shock at how close the pictures are to the spirit of music. Such poignant images, such musical editing. This observation is absolutely essential in the context of our symposium. In my announcement, I was also raising questions like what possibilities exist in the medium of film to act improvisationally and to capture or transform moments of the depicted in a special aesthetic way in one's own formal language. Or which moments of improvisation create aesthetic characteristics in film that convey meanings on a different level, both in terms of content and form. One earlier improvisation film from 1964 is Michael Snow's New York Eye and Ear Control. The music are ensemble improvisations by an augmented version of Albert Ayler's group. Snow wanted the music as pure, free improvisation as he could get. The film itself is completely independent from the music. There has not been any idea of documenting the group's playing. Instead, the idea was to find a form where sound and film relate in very specific ways. This approach could not be more opposed to a documentation of free improvisation, like, for example, the wonderful film about the Gruppo di Improvisazione Nuova Consonanza, directed by Theo Galler and produced by the Northern German Radio in 1967. So those were the days. Although Derek Bailey has pointed out in his pivotal book, Improvisation, Its Nature and Practice in Music, that there is something central to the spirit of voluntary improvisation which is opposed to the aims and contradicts the idea of documentation. He has still contributed an extraordinarily rich treasure of documenting improvisation. Interestingly, this project started from some radio interviews in 1974. Tim told me yesterday that there was an LP following these interviews too. This found the form of a book published in 1980, from which in 1992 resulted the brilliant 4-part television program called On the Edge, Improvisation in Music, produced and aired by BBC's Channel 4. So I choose this example as representative for the absolute necessity for documentation. Where would we be without the recordings of improvised events, and what treasures would not be available to us that would otherwise have disappeared from cultural memory forever? After Step Across the Border, I have continued the ImproVisions series with 2 artists who are also participating in the symposium. They will both be performing tonight. With Makiko Nishikaze, I was generally discussing the relation between the ears and the eyes while showing some examples from her filmic work. And just as Makiko, also Michael Vorfeld is as well a musician and a filmmaker. And it was an important point of departure for our talk, how these 2 realms go together and relate to each other. We had shown also films from Michael, and one of them he will also be presenting in the evening. Hallo Michael, schönen guten Morgen. I have another 2 special guests here on the symposium. Helen Petts and Ebba Jahn, who are both filmmakers who have been accompanying improvising musicians since many, many years. Helen, for example, has a huge YouTube channel that she had started in 2008. And she was also co-running the Mopomoso series, and she was behind Mopomoso TV. Ebba is the author of Rising Tones Cross from 2005, which can definitely be considered as a classic too when it comes to film and improvisation. I'm also happy to have Jérémy Pujol here tonight. His film Go Out and Play is based on a series of concerts by female artists from the experimental scene in Berlin. And through radical aesthetic choices, this experimental documentation also gives insight into their unique approach. Additionally to the film topic, or as a roof for this maybe, the aspect of documentation is also manifest in 2 exhibitions. One photo exhibition, which you might have seen already, with concert photos shot at Exploratorium by Christina Marx, and one exhibition with concert posters from Lol Coxhill's archive, assembled by Tim Fletcher, here taking the role of artifacts that are in a particular way corresponding to events involving improvisation. I'm also very happy about Roberto Duarte's installation Noche, representing his artistic work here at the symposium. He has made a wonderful film a few years ago called Berliner Improvisation, which I recommend to watch if you haven't seen it yet. It's not on the symposium, but he's here with the installation. During the longer breaks, tonight and tomorrow midday, you have the possibility to join a short workshop by Bernadette Kazou. Hello, Bernadette. Combining dance and filming. So if you feel like moving after sitting here for too long and like wanting to do some practical filming on your own, please simply come to the workshop at the announced time. I would like to say a big thank you to all of you for your interest, for coming here, for presenting your ideas and your art at the symposium. I was really happy for all the proposals that I received, many more as the ones which have now found their way to the program, but the limitations of a short symposium weekend didn't allow for more. So now I'm wishing you all 2 really inspiring days of insights and exchange. Thank you very much. And then we'll continue in just a little bit with Helen Petts.
It's a wonderful introduction. My name is Helen Petts, and I've been making films for 40 years. I started out making quite political, feminist, activist films in the 1980s, and as a result of there was a big radical upshift in TV in the UK in the 80s, because we had a new TV channel called Channel 4, which was commissioning quite radical political work. It's no longer like that at all. It's very conventional now. But I was lucky enough to get a commission from that, and that's set me along the road of being a filmmaker. And I also went on to make arts documentaries for BBC and Channel 4. But I was in a very bad road accident, and that career was ended. And I went to art school and became a painter. And then I met a musician called John Russell. No, sorry, I've got to get this right. I'm improvising now. While I was working in television, I made a rather humorous documentary with Paul Morley, who was a music journalist. And it was looking at various aspects of British culture with a kind of ironic eye. And I was given a choice of composers for this film. And one of them was Steve Beresford. And I had been to free improvisation concerts. Because I don't know, I used to go to Feminist Improvisation Group concerts when I was involved in the women's movement quite a lot. And so I knew about free improvisation. And I thought, yeah, Steve Beresford, that would be really interesting to get him to do the music for my film. And the two of us were involved in a road accident immediately after it was finished, and that ended my career as a TV director. But a few years later, through Steve, met Lol Coxhill, met other free improvisation musicians. And in the meantime, cameras had become smaller and smaller and cheaper and cheaper. And there was this new thing called YouTube. And at the time I was painting, but it was a bit lonely, and I wanted to get out of the house and meet other people. And I went along to a concert with a camera, and it was John Chakai and drummer, I've forgotten his name. Oh, never mind. I'm getting old. And John Russell came and sat behind me and leaned over my shoulder and said, "Come and film my gig. I do a gig every month at the Vortex Jazz Club." And it gave me a wonderful new project. So I filmed Mopomoso every month. And we worked out there was this thing called YouTube, and we put them on YouTube. And it gave me this new outlet. But because I'd been studying art, I'd become much more of an artist in the way I was thinking, not thinking journalistically as much, but more as a visual artist. I then got bored filming the performance and started to film the creation of the music. And in fact, Step Across the Border, that film was a wonderful inspiration for me, because it's not about filming a performance at all. And I must watch it again. I haven't watched it for ages. But there's this fantastic sequence with an alarm clock that's just brilliant, isn't it? And the music mixing with the alarm clock. And it's little moments like that I hope to do with what I do. But this film I'm showing today, well, no, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. I've actually put together a 5-minute clip of the people that John Russell introduced me to. If you want to see the concert performances, they're on my YouTube channel, which is called Helentonic. It was just a username I came up with. I didn't realise it was going to become quite well known. Otherwise, I'd have come up with something better. But and also, after that, I also set up Mopomoso YouTube channel, which is just called Mopomoso, and I think Mopomoso TV is a separate one, isn't it? That was set up after I left.
It's the same channel.
Is it the same channel? Sorry, I should know, shouldn't I? John Russell died. There's a picture of him in a wonderful sparkly jacket out in the hallway. And this is the first time I've been to Germany since he died. And it's, you know, I came with him last time at Christopher's invitation to Hanover. And when I came, when the plane landed in Berlin, I burst into tears. And, you know, it's still raw. He died 4 years ago, but it's still raw. He helped me find a new life for myself. Yeah. I've put together a 5-minute compilation of the artists that John Russell introduced me to. These are not the concert performances. They're little films that I made with them that was specially set up. You know, we went out and explored where we could play together. And so that's the first thing. And then I'll show the Lol Coxhill film. And I'll introduce that after this introduction. Thank you. The last two films were commissions that I did. The first was following Kurt Schwitter's route of exile from Germany to Norway, and then the English Lake District, where he died on Penniless and Unknown. And that includes lots of, 4 free improvisation musicians: Roger Turner, Phil Minton, Sylvia Hallett and Adam Bowman. And then the last one was a film I made for Manchester Art Gallery about a Chinese artist who lived in the Lake District as well, with Steve Beresford improvising throughout. But this morning, I'm thinking it's not. I'm going to talk about my Lol Coxhill film. I first saw Lol Coxhill play when I was 16 in Amsterdam, at the Concertgebouw, and he was playing with Misha, Mengelberg and Bennink, and I was 16. I thought it was really weird, but he was so cool. I mean, he was wearing these dungarees and little dark round glasses and playing this funny little saxophone that I'd not, I didn't realise was a real instrument in those days, and I thought he was amazing, and then subsequently, as I grew up and grew older, I saw him play in London when, he was always in kind of really interesting. There were a lot of outdoor performances that he seemed to be involved in. He did a piece on the River Thames that David Toop devised, but he was a leading figure of the free improvisation European world. He was a very European person, really. And I was fortunate enough to get to know him in the last 5 years of his life. And I realised that he was probably getting dementia. And my partner had died, and I regretted never filming him dancing because he was a wonderful dancer. And I thought somebody needs to film Lol. He was becoming more and more vague and forgetful, but he was playing more and more beautifully, and I loved the way he was playing. So whenever I got the opportunity, I filmed him just playing solos. I also filmed him playing with other musicians, but it was particularly the solos that I kind of collected, and I had no plan to do anything with them. I just thought there should be a record of this. And that comment from Derek Bailey about not recording the improvisation. I mean, that's a young person's, people were dying, and I wanted to make a record of what amazing music they were playing, and particularly Lol. But there was no way I could ever get him to let me interview him because he didn't like talking about what he did. And so when he died, I then was commissioned to make this piece for a music festival. In the Lake District, actually, and Cumbria, in the northeast of England. And Lol had been the music director of a theatre company there, and so that was the connection with the local area. But I just took these solo improvisations and played with them and mixed them together, which was an extraordinary act of hubris on my part, because I'm not a musician, but I got Steve Beresford to kind of say, does this work? And he thought it did, and he pushed me to keep on doing it. And then Lol's wife, Ulrika, she allowed me into the flat where he there is still this extraordinary archive that Tim Fletcher over there is cataloguing, and he collected everything in his career. So I got to film all this stuff, toys, playbills, posters, record sleeves, and then I discovered that a film had been made. There already was a conventional, very beautiful documentary about Lol, called Frog Dance, and it is still kind of out there somewhere. So there wasn't any. I didn't want to make a documentary about him, and I then discovered there had been a student film made about him in 1972. By a friend of a friend, and I managed to find this, which involved quite a lot of researching. Thank you to Mick Audsley, who let me use extracts from his student film. Mick is now a really, really successful film editor in the feature film world. But he when he was a student, he made this little film with Lol. And you can see Lol doesn't really like being interviewed, but he did get him to talk a little bit about his playing, so that's in the film as well. I think we should push on, yeah. And I'm very happy to answer questions after the film.
Thank you so much, Helen, for proposing this beautiful film. It was really good choice to show it here in the context of the symposium, I think. So before I ask anything, we still have a few minutes for questions, if you have any, or comments. Yeah.
Can I just say it was originally made as an installation in an art gallery, well, a disused warehouse. And this is the cinema version.
Oh, wow, thank you. I gotta make. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. I so roughly enjoyed I'm here. The storytelling aspect of it, and there's one thing I also like the juxtaposition of like the improvised concert and the objects you were filming, and it went together so wonderfully. And I wonder, like, how came you chose to like go with your camera so roughly through like these objects, like the radio and the other things?
How did I choose to do that?
Yes.
Well, Lol was very eccentric and very funny, and his flat was so him. It was like a distillation of his character, and it was just an enormous privilege. It took me about 6 months to persuade his wife to let me do it, because she'd left everything exactly as it was. I don't know what it's like now, but she didn't want to change anything, and so it was. It felt like it might be quite an intrusion to go in and film such intimate things from his life. But she saw another film I'd made and just came up to me immediately and said, yes, you can come and do it. And but all those little toys and the little, it was so much part of his character. And yeah, it was like sculpting, putting the images together and looking at the reaction the different images had montage between them, and also the heads, getting two heads and the way they reflect each other, and so the process of editing it was like sculpting, really, and sculpting with sound. And can I say, this is probably the best sound I've ever heard it played back on. It's wonderful, and does this. Dave Hunt, who did the final mix, it does him a great service. So thank you.
Susan, I think your work is very good work, because I think face the main problem to filming free improvisation. That is the big central full screen. You choose to compose with inner frames, and this is the best solution. Probably you made that for crop the main images that you receive, but the solution is perfect, because for me, one of the enemies of the filming music or improvising music is if you see a big screen, central full screen, you try to read that screen, and the sounds plays secondary role. And the only the only solution is to make many projections or inner frames, or destroy the totalitarianism of the big screen.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, part of the reason for choosing to do it like that is that some of this footage was shot a long time ago, and it wasn't very good resolution. So, blowing it up to fill the full screen, it would have looked, it looks a bit ropey at times anyway. It would have looked even more ropey. So, but like I say, I liked the dialogue between the different images as they come in and out, and the process of editing was a kind of, I'd been to art school. I painted using abstract images where I'd erase. I was interested in pigments and different textures and rhythms of, and I felt I was doing the same with these images as well, really, and looking at how they interact with each other, and yeah.
Hi, thank you. It was a really beautiful film. I'm so pleased to see it, because I missed you when you were in Glasgow, so I had to come to Berlin to see it, which is it's a real shame.
Hello.
It's not.
Oh yeah, can I just say there's a much longer talk with Francis McKee that I did on my website. You can hear it it's on my website.
So that's the CCA in Glasgow
devoted to this, and he asked really great questions actually. And he knew nothing about Lol Coxhill at all.
Yeah, lots of things to say. I thought the editing was very musical. I love the kind of the way the music was edited to speak to each other. It was really lovely. But a question's actually more about Lol. I'm kind of, from a kind of psychological point of view, we know that music, for people living with dementia, it acts in a particular communicative way. People can remember songs long after they can't speak anymore. People can communicate through music. Someone can ask for a cup of tea by singing "Polly, put the kettle on," and it means, "Can you make me some tea?" They can't ask for it, but they can sing it. I just wondered if you had any thoughts about, Lol was talking about himself as his desire to be himself through his music. I wonder if you had any thoughts about where, how you kind of appreciated that in his playing, as he, over time. Because I could hear, I thought, certain things he was maybe doing over years, and preserving that sense of self through his music, even though other things may have been affected. So I wonder if you could just kind of comment broadly on that, because that's not actually a question.
I'm not sure I'm that qualified to answer that question, because I only knew him at the end of his life, really, personally. But his playing remained, and it remained very much Lol Coxhill. I mean, somebody walked in off the street. It was an installation at Cafe Otto Project Space when they had a separate kind of art gallery space, and somebody just walked in off the street and said, "I can hear Lol Coxhill playing." Well, you know, and he knew he was dead. So, you know, yeah. I mean, I have to say, there was never a formal diagnosis of dementia. I just was aware of the fact that he was becoming more confused and forgetful. But you know, it's not for me to say he had dementia, really. I mean, he had lots of other problems and was very ill for a year at the end of his life. But he had this very, very recognisable sound. And I think as he got older, he was... I don't know what Tim thinks about this. He seemed to play in a more sparse way, playing around with space and silence a little bit more. I don't know. That's...
I personally, I knew him for 20-odd years. Thank you. I didn't really notice his playing changing at all. But yes, I mean, his memory was really, really shot towards the end. But his long-term memory was amazing. He could remember things from the 60s. There's stories I could go into about that. But I didn't really notice his music changing as much. I mean, his sparseness and things like that, he was incredibly reactive to spaces. He really, really understood spaces and the sound in space. So he would react in a church completely differently to in a much smaller venue. But really, music-wise, he just played beautifully right up to the end. I mean, one of his last gigs he did was in Berlin. You'll see the poster of it upstairs, and it was playing with Eddie Prevost, and it was only about 6 months before he died, and it was a very beautiful. It's on a recording, and but yeah, he had that continuity of sound, which was amazing. You know, you listen back to that, but so many variations. I mean, I always think of it, a lot of improvised music as being more a variant than an improvising. Certainly with people like Lol and Derek, I think they were such brilliant musicians and had such a brilliant traditional musical standard that they were working to, that they used variations on sound and on notes, and they knew obviously. You could see Lol there playing Lover Man at the end there was just beautiful. That's one of his favourite tunes from the old days, and they could do anything basically, I think, and Lol really exploited that. Derek sort of honed it down to doing one kind of thing all the way around, like a cubist. But Lol was extraordinary and unique, I think, on that, the way he played. It's absolutely amazing.
Can I just say also that as a filmmaker, I'm really influenced by Lol's sense of timing. He gave me the courage to leave things longer, leave longer pauses, explore silence, and he also had this kind of wry sense of humour, as you see, that juxtaposing things to create funny little jolts. And as editing, I think he gave me permission to do that when I'm editing my own footage, both with this film and other films I've made subsequently.
So time is more or less up. Michael, you have a short remark also? Still?
Maybe very shortly.
Very shortly.
Just talking about time, I found it also very interesting that you choose this one frame with his solo concert, because I often get the impression when I see a documentary about somebody as a film documentation, I think many filmmakers are confronted with the question, how much footage should I put in? And so the whole duration of this film you just showed is, from my perspective, or as I receive it or perceive it, is the duration is made by the duration of this solo concert, which I really appreciated a lot. You know, and maybe you have much more footage and it could have been much longer, but the timing is made by his concert.
Yeah, that was the foundation for the piece, and then everything else is placed on top of that. Yes.
So Helen will still be here to ask more questions and to talk to her about her work. Just when I remember when Fred Frith and Nicholas Humbert were here, Fred always thought it was really funny that they called it an improvisation film, because there was so much editing and so much composition in the end. And it's I also thought it's really amazing the way how you composed the pictures, how you composed the different musics. It's new pieces which came out there, or the combination of the talk and the music. Yeah, it was all really beautifully set.
But we improvise when we edit as well. I go into a dream and just try things out. And
we will, of course, it's always involved too. And there will be a talk later on the aspect of improvisation in montage also. So we will talk about this just in a bit. It was quite fitting that I started with the Step Across the Border film, and we continued with Lol Coxhill, because upstairs in the poster exhibition you always also find posters of Fred Frith and Lol Coxhill duos. So please go up directly, second floor, to the Studio 2, and Tim Fletcher is going to talk just a little bit about the posters, and then this goes directly to the coffee break, and then we'll back in I think at 12 we are going to continue. Till then. And thank you so much, Helen, of course.